Hi everyone, welcome to the Courier Lab, where we demonstrate how Courier works, highlight some of our favorite community projects, and talk about all things notifications. The topic of today's video is going to be ghostifications. So let me walk you through the scenario of the demo project. The entire storyline is that there's this character called Boo that went to a hackathon, and they just really weren't that inspired. They didn't know what type of project they wanted to create, so they decided to go out on a walk. And on that walk, they came across this massive haunted mansion. Upon entering that mansion, they realized that there were a bunch of people inside and there was like this massive party. So they start walking around, talking to people, engaging with the activities, and then at some point they black out and they wake up as a ghost. Now they were murdered, but they don't really know how they got there. But hear this, they found a way to communicate with the real world using notifications. So you're on this application and you're getting all of these notifications from a ghost that's telling you that they were just killed and you need to figure out how they died. It sounds a little dark, so just bear with me, but as you can see, Boo the ghost is super cute, so hopefully that makes up for it. Now, before I get into any of that, I want to take some time to talk about good communication. So there's certain perks to having good communication in any application. The first is to stimulate user engagement. You want to make sure that you're using notifications in a way that makes your users want to use your application even more and not just turn off the notifications entirely. The second is to enhance the user's experience. There's ways in which you can use communication with that user so that they want to use that application. Once they're on it, they want to spend more time on it. They feel like they're actually getting some value out of what you're communicating with them. And the third is to increase conversion rates. Now, they've seen your notifications, they're on your applications, they've used it. What's next? There has to be some sort of call to action. Are the users aware of what that is? Is it just to spend more time on that application? Is it to do certain tasks? Is it to communicate with other people? Whatever it is, having a really good notification system built into your application can really improve the entire experience that a user has. Now, there are certain drawbacks that developers face when they're trying to build their applications. Building it from scratch can be really overwhelming and time-consuming, and it can be very expensive when you're considering costs from hiring engineers and asking them to work on this project specifically, right? You're taking their time away from other projects that they could be working on as well. Sometimes it takes multiple engineers. Not all companies and startups or even individuals working on their own side projects have the time and resources to build something like that from scratch. So that's why Courier exists. The purpose of Courier is to enable developers to be able to build a very quick and efficient notification system that is entirely customizable and that can allow developers to focus on building the parts of their application that really matter to them. The first time that you log into Courier, it's going to ask you to send your very first notification. This is just a way for us to practice how to use Courier and to actually see how it works before you start building out your own application. So as soon as you go to app.courier.com, it'll ask you to log in. Once you've logged in, it'll walk you through a few steps that take you to designing your very first email and then sending it using the SendGrid provider. Once you've done that, the next step is to actually start creating your own notification. So let's do that right now. You want to navigate over to the main homepage. That's generally app.courier.com, and you should be logged in. Here you'll see a bunch of different options and menus. On the sidebar, you want to see that you are currently on the home menu. Right below that is the designer, and that is where you get to actually design all of your notifications and automations and a bunch of other stuff. That's where we want to go first. Once you click on the designer, you can actually create a new notification. So let's try doing that. Once you've clicked on it, you will see an option to add channels or providers. Let's take a minute to talk about the difference between channels and providers. Channels are exactly what they sound like. They are the means through which we're sending our notifications. So that can be our email, that can be chat, it could be a push notification, and it can even be a chat application notification. So the providers are the ones that are, in a sense, providing you that channel. So Twilio, for example, provides you a channel to send an SMS. Versus SendGrid, that allows you to send messages through email, right? SendGrid and Twilio in this example are the providers. Email and SMS in this example are the channels that we're sending them through. When you're choosing a channel, you can actually choose multiple providers that go with it. You can choose to send to multiple providers at once, or you can add certain conditions that say, hey, listen, I don't want to send an SMS unless that person has already received an email and that email was undelivered. If that email was undelivered, then I want the user to get an SMS just in case there are some errors in the system, right? So that's ways in which you can start building workflows, which we'll talk about in a second. On the screen, you'll see some examples of SMS notification providers, chat notification providers, email notification providers, and push notification providers. Now, as a developer, you don't really want to choose one specific channel or provider when you're building your application to send out notifications to your user. It's like putting all of your eggs in one basket. Let's say you choose to only use one provider for an SMS channel, right? And let's say that person, that one of your users, never checks their messages, or they have their phone on silent all the time, but they tend to work on their computer a lot more. They might be more likely to check emails. And so now you are restricting yourself and putting yourself in a place where your user's highly likely not going to get that notification. And even if they get it, it's delivered, they're probably not going to see it. So that's why you want to build certain workflows that make sure that your user is getting the information that they need in a way that is helping you succeed at getting them to use your application, but also doesn't overwhelm them when it comes to using the application. Now, there's two main types of workflows. We're going to start by talking about the channel workflows. That includes where are you sending the notifications, where are the users viewing those notifications, and what happens when the user isn't online. You really want to be able to think these things through and prepare for the worst when it comes to communicating certain things to your users. Okay, so now that we know the difference between channels and providers, you can choose which channels and providers you want to send your notifications to. You can choose to start off with just one or build your entire workflow. It's entirely up to you. Once you've made that decision, you can go ahead and move on to the next step, which will actually allow you to design your notification. Courier has an inbuilt design studio where you can just drag and drop certain elements. So for example, when it's email, you can add images, you can add text, you can add bullet points, all sorts of things, versus if it's a push notification, those options might be a little bit more limited just because of what is possible to be sent in a push notification. But what you can do is if you have multiple different providers or multiple different types of channels, it'll allow you to kind of create notifications that are very similar and use the same formatting and make slight adjustments to all of the different types of channels that you have. So for example, let's say you want to send a push and an email notification that has the same content, but the email obviously is going to be a lot more complex. You can have a very similar template for the push notification with less content in it. Once you've designed your message, you want to always make sure to publish it. If you don't publish at this step, it will let you move on, but it will give you an error at the very end. So if you're at that stage where you're sending a notification and it's giving you an error, just make sure that you've published your changes. Once you're satisfied with your design, you can move on to the next step, where it's going to actually let you preview your message and create a test event. Now, a test event is a way for you to actually send this out to either yourself or one of your friends and see what it looks like. So if it's a push notification on a web app, you can use a test event to correlate it to that specific application. And that way you can actually view what it looks like to the user before you actually send it out. And the very last step is to send your notification and watch it come to life. The project itself is called Ghostifications. The provider that we're actually going to be using is Courier Push. So if you go through the list of channels, you can click on Push. And if you go through the list of providers, you'll find Courier Push. And there's two components that come with it. It's toast notifications, so those pop-up notifications, as well as inbox. And once you start sending notifications, you'll see that toast notifications are the ones that just pop up on the screen, and the inbox notifications are where those notifications can be stored in order for users to be able to access them at a different time. All right, so first things first, we want to add our Courier Push integration. Once you've added your channel or provider when you're creating that notification, you might see an orange symbol next to Courier Push. That means that we haven't exactly installed the integration just yet. So you want to click on that, navigate to Courier Push, and click on the install button at the very bottom of the page. Once you've done that, go back to your notification and make sure that that orange button is gone. If it's still there, try reloading the page and you should be good to go. Next step is the actual design. In this case, the design for Toast and Inbox is going to be the same, so you don't have to worry about changing it up too much. We recommend having a title, a message in the middle, and then having some sort of call to action. Now that call to action is optional. You don't necessarily have to have it in there, but it is really recommended to have it. It doesn't really make sense to send a push notification to your user unless they're able to click on it and go and actually do something with it. Once you've designed your notification, go ahead and publish your changes. For the next step, you want to create your test events. Just keep in mind for test events, they do auto-save, but they only save if the JSON in there is valid. If there's any commas or brackets or anything that's missing, it's not going to auto-save that for you. So make sure that everything's valid. It should say valid JSON at the very top, and then you should be able to move on to the next step. All right, so now it's time to build your own React application. If you already have an application and you just want to integrate push notifications, you can skip over the next few steps. If you want, you can clone our repository. The link should be in the description below, and you can use all of the starter code that we've provided you, or you can create your own React application from scratch. For that, you want to make sure that you've installed Node, NPM, and NPX on your computer. Use the create React app command to actually start, and then you want to go into the src/app.js file and start editing. The first step is to run this command on your terminal. Once you've run that command, you can get your public client key from Courier, where you installed the Courier push integration, copy that, and then save it as a variable in your app.js file. You can also save it as an environment variable if you want to keep it protected. Next, you want to add this import statement to the very top of your app.js file. And once you've done that, you can add the Courier provider into your return statement. That Courier provider tag needs to have two different properties. The first one is the client key that you've saved as a variable, and the second one is the user ID. And we'll get back to what that actually means in a second. The commands and the import statements for Toast and Inbox are going to pop up on the screen. So you can go ahead and run those commands and then add those import statements to the top of your app.js file as well. You can add the components within the Courier provider tags. Once you've added all of the components, you can use the npm start command to actually start your application. And the very last step is to go to your Courier application and send your notification. So if you actually follow the instructions that I just gave you, your notification probably didn't go through, and that's for a very minor but common reason. Let's go and check the logs and figure out what happened. The first thing that you want to do is go to the home screen. You can also go directly into the logs and read through all of them and find the one that's the most important to you, or the latest one in this case. If you're on the home screen, you should see a little chart that shows you all of the messages that you've sent out. And one of the notifications should be grayed out and should say undelivered. If you click on that, it'll also take you to the logs for that specific notification. Once you open the logs, you can see exactly what went wrong. If you click on the undeliverable option, it'll give you a reason for why that message was not delivered. And in our case, it very clearly states that there was no valid delivery channel. If you've never actually sent a push notification before, you're going to be like, what the heck? I added my channel. Why is this happening? In our case, what we want to do is go over to the Courier docs and Command F and find channel. That's going to take you to a very specific part of the docs that says testing your integration. At the very bottom, there's a line that says, if your send request does not include profile.courier.channel, then the message will not send. This is a different type of channel. This is not the same as the provider versus channel conversation we were having. This is information about the actual application that's receiving this notification. So what you want to do is copy the example from the documentation, and in your Courier application, go back to the part where you're previewing your design and click on your test event. In your test event, you want to make sure that your profile actually looks like this, so that you're specifying a Courier channel, and that ID, it can be user ID, it could be another word, or it can be a bunch of random letters and numbers. Once you've updated your test event and ensured that the JSON that you've put in there is valid and it's saved, you can go ahead and try to send your notification again. Now, the first time that you send it, it might take a couple of seconds, but if your application is running, you should receive a Toast notification that looks like this. All right, so this is the very last part. Earlier in this video, we were talking a little bit about two different types of workflows. The first one that we discussed was channels. The second one is automations. Now, automations are very valuable when it comes to actually sending out your notifications, because you don't want to be constantly sending out every individual notification by yourself manually. You can use it to send out a bunch of notifications at once, schedule notifications to go out at specific times or at delays, and you can use it to send out reminders for people to check previous messages. Let's try automating our own notifications. You want to go back to your designer where you created your first notification, but instead of clicking on notifications at the very top menu, go ahead and click on automations this time and create a new template. Once you're there, it might give you some options, or you can create an automation template from scratch. Either way, what you'll notice is that there's options for you to start adding certain steps. The two steps that we want to keep in mind are sending notifications and adding delays. In my case, I chose to send out 3 different notifications, one after the other, add a delay, and then cancel the automation entirely. In order for this to work, I first had to design all 3 of those notifications, save the specific notification IDs from that last step, and then come into the automation template, add them in, paste those notification IDs so that the automation template knew exactly what I wanted to send out, and then update the recipient ID of where I was going to send them out to. This recipient ID should match the same recipient ID that your application has. Once you've created your template and published all of your changes, you can go ahead and do the last step, which is actually invoking the automation template. Once you've done that, you should see all of those notifications pop up on your screen and you're good to go. Now it's your turn to build your own application and integrate push notifications. I hope all of that makes sense. If you want, you can go ahead and check out the Courier docs. They have extensive information about how you can use the Courier push provider, as well as any other provider that you're interested in using, and how you can integrate it into your application. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us on social media or go to our courier.com website and chat with us. Thank you so much for joining us at the very first episode of the Courier Lab. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and let us know what you thought in the comments.